Part 1. The sky over New York turned black in the middle of the day. It was not a storm. It was not an eclipse. It was something far worse. Huge ships, bigger than mountains, darker than night, slid silently into orbit. They came without warning, without signal, without mercy. People on the streets stopped walking. Cars screeched to a halt. Children pointed upward, their faces pale with fear. No one had seen anything like this before. Not in movies. Not in dreams. This was real. The invaders called themselves the Krell Dominion. They were a warlike race from the outer spiral arms of the galaxy. For centuries, they had crushed weaker worlds, stripped them of resources, and erased their histories. Earth was just another dot on their star charts, a soft target, they believed, ripe for the taking. They had watched humanity for years through hidden probes, seeing only chaos. Wars over land, arguments over beliefs, nations divided by borders and pride. To the Krell, humans were primitive, disorganized, and weak. They expected to land, fire a few shots, and watch the planet surrender within hours. They were wrong. Within minutes of the first ship appearing, alarms blared across every military base on Earth. Generals, admirals, and defense ministers scrambled to connect. Old rivalries were forgotten. Old enemies picked up secure lines and spoke as one. Russia, China, the United States, Brazil, Nigeria, they all shared the same enemy now. Satellites that once spied on each other began sharing real-time data on Krell movements. Underground bunkers lit up with activity. Hidden launch silos opened across deserts, forests, and frozen tundras. From Nevada, a squadron of F-47 Raptors, next-generation atmospheric fighters, shot into the sky. Their pilots wore neural-linked helmets and carried experimental rail cannons. Among them was Lieutenant Chris Dawson. He was 32, quiet and steady. He grew up fixing tractors on his family's farm in Colorado. He never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. As his jet pierced the cloud layer, he saw the Krell fleet for the first time. His breath caught in his throat. The ships were enormous, covered in jagged armor and glowing red veins of energy. But Chris didn't panic. He tightened his grip on the controls and whispered, "Let's see what you've got." On the ground in downtown Chicago, Lena Ortiz sprinted through a collapsing subway tunnel. She was an engineer with the city's emergency response team. When the Krell fired their first energy pulse, a wide-beam EMP that knocked out power grids across North America, Lena knew the city's defense shield would fail without backup. She carried a heavy satchel of tools and a tablet linked to the central grid. Her hands were bleeding from climbing over broken concrete, but she didn't stop. She reached the main junction box just as sparks rained from the ceiling. With shaking fingers, she rerouted power from the geothermal plant under Lake Michigan. Lights flickered back on in police stations, hospitals, and anti-air batteries. The shield hummed to life just as a Krell dropship screamed overhead, firing plasma bolts at the skyline. The energy bounced off the shield, sending the alien craft spinning into the river. The Krell were confused. They had expected chaos. Instead, they found coordination. Human cities didn't crumble into riots. People helped each other. Firefighters pulled families from burning buildings. Teachers sheltered students in basements. Soldiers stood their ground even when outgunned. In Lagos, a group of teenagers used hacked drones to blind Krell scouts with strobe pulses. In Tokyo, a retired robotics professor reprogrammed factory bots to build barricades from scrap metal. Everywhere, humans adapted. The Krell commander, High Warlord Zorvak, watched from his flagship, the Iron Maw. His crimson eyes narrowed as reports flooded in. "Why do they not flee?" he growled. "Why do they fight like cornered beasts?" His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Crix, replied, "Perhaps they do not know fear." Zorvak slammed his fist on the console. "Then we will teach it to them." He ordered the deployment of shock troops, 10-foot-tall armored soldiers with plasma claws and reinforced exoskeletons. They dropped from orbit in flaming pods, landing in city centers with earth-shaking force. In São Paulo, one such pod crushed a school. But before the Krell warrior could stand, a local militia armed with shotguns, Molotovs, and stolen military rifles surrounded it. They fired until the alien's armor cracked. Then they dragged its smoking body into the street and burned it. The message was clear. Earth was not easy prey. Back in orbit, Chris Dawson led his squadron in a daring maneuver. He noticed that the Krell ships rotated their shield frequencies every 4.7 seconds. Most pilots missed it. But Chris, with his farm boy patience and sharp eyes, saw the pattern. He radioed his team. "On my mark, 3, 2, 1, fire! A volley of rail slugs punched through a Krell cruiser's weak point. The ship shuddered, then exploded in a silent burst of fire. It was the first Krell vessel lost in the invasion. Cheers erupted in command centers worldwide, but the cost was high. 2 of Chris's wingmates didn't make it back. Their names would be added to a growing list. Still, humanity held the line. Not because they had the best weapons, not because they were united by politics or religion, but because they shared something deeper, a stubborn will to survive, to protect their home no matter the odds. As night fell over the ruined cities, people gathered around radios, battery-powered phones and flickering screens. They heard reports from every continent. They heard about Chris in the sky, Lena in the tunnels, the kids in Lagos, the old man in Tokyo. They realized they were not alone. And for the first time in a long time, Earth felt like one planet. High above, unseen by human eyes, a small silver drone hovered at the edge of the solar system. It belonged to the Galactic Council. Its sensors recorded everything: the Krell aggression, the human resistance, the raw, unyielding spirit of a species they had dismissed as insignificant. The drone sent its data streaming across the stars, and somewhere in a chamber of light and crystal, ancient beings watched in stunned silence. The invasion had begun, but so had something else, something the Krell never expected and the Council could hardly believe. Earth was fighting back, and it was winning. Part 2. Far beyond the stars, in a place where time bent like soft glass and light moved in spirals, the Galactic Council watched Earth burn. Their chamber was not built of stone or steel, but of living crystal that hummed with ancient knowledge. Delegates from 53 species sat in floating rings, their forms as varied as the worlds they represented, some with wings of shimmering membrane, others with skin like polished obsidian. A few no more than clouds of thought given voice. They had gathered to observe what they believed would be a routine matter: the swift and quiet removal of a primitive species that had, in their view, outlived its usefulness. The Krell Dominion had petitioned for clearance to sanitize Earth, citing fabricated evidence of human biohazards and uncontrolled technological leakage. The Council, weary of conflict and trusting in Krell reports, had granted provisional approval. They expected to see a short clean operation. They did not expect what came next. Through quantum-linked drones no larger than grains of sand, the Council witnessed the Krell Armada descend upon Earth. At first, their reactions were calm, even bored. A few delegates sipped luminous nectar from floating cups. Others whispered about scheduling the next agenda item. But then the humans fought back, not with clumsy desperation, but with sharp, coordinated resistance. The Council leaned forward. Their calm shattered. On the main viewing sphere, footage showed human fighters, small, fragile-looking craft, dancing between Krell warships like fireflies around a storm. One pilot, a man named Chris Dawson, executed a turn so precise it defied standard physics. He fired at a gap in the enemy's shield cycle, and a Krell cruiser exploded. A murmur rippled through the chamber. "That maneuver, it should be impossible," said Counselor Vex of the Zira Concord, his voice like wind through hollow reeds. His 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of deep surprise among his kind. Then came the ground footage. In Chicago, a young woman named Lena Ortiz rerouted power through a failing grid under collapsing rubble. Her hands bled, but she never stopped. In Lagos, teenagers used hacked drones to blind Krell scouts with strobe pulses. In São Paulo, civilians dragged a wounded soldier to safety while firing homemade rifles at armored invaders. The Council had studied human history, wars, greed, division, but they had never seen this. Ordinary people choosing courage over fear. Unity over chaos in the face of extinction. Ambassador Lyra of the Orlan hegemony, a tall being with silver skin and eyes like twin moons, watched silently. She had once argued that Tier 3 civilizations should be left to evolve naturally, even if it meant suffering. Now she felt shame. "We dismissed them as noise," she said softly. "But they are singing a song of defiance we have not heard in 10,000 cycles." The drone feed shifted to a battlefield near Geneva. A human medic, Corporal Ray Boyd, crawled through a cratered field under heavy fire. He carried 3 wounded soldiers on his back, 1 unconscious, 2 screaming in pain. A Krell drone hovered above, scanning for targets. Ray didn't run. He pulled a handheld railgun from his belt, a weapon too heavy for Mosi. his species to wield one-handed and fired. The drone shattered. He kept moving. The council watched as he reached a field hospital, collapsed from exhaustion, and still checked each soldier's pulse before allowing medics to take them. He saved them, whispered a young delegate from the Quillen Enclave. He could have saved himself. Back in orbit, human engineers activated hidden defense platforms buried in the moon's crust. These stations, built in secret over decades, fired gravitic pulses that disrupted Krell formation integrity. The Krell fleet, once a perfect wedge of destruction, began to scatter. On Earth, hackers led by a teenager named Marcus Bell infiltrated Krell comms using a virus disguised as a surrender signal. For 17 minutes, Krell ships mistook each other for human decoys and opened fire. The chaos was beautiful in its brutality, a testament to human cunning. Counselor Vex replayed the footage 3 times. "They are not just resisting," he said. "They are outthinking a species that has conquered 30 worlds. How?" A data stream arrived from the drone near Earth. It contained decrypted logs from a downed Krell vessel. Ambassador Lyra accessed it. Her silver skin dimmed as she read. The Krell had lied. Earth was not a biohazard. It was not unstable. It was simply rich in water, in minerals, in genetic diversity. The Krell wanted to strip it clean and sell its pieces. The invasion was never about safety. It was about greed. Silence filled the chamber. The hum of the crystal walls grew louder, as if the building itself was angry. For the first time in centuries, the council felt doubt. They had trusted the Krell because the Krell were strong, organized, and familiar. Humans were messy, emotional, and unpredictable. Yet in this moment, the humans looked more honorable. A new feed appeared. It showed Colonel Eli Grant leading a strike team across the lunar surface toward a Krell gravity anchor, a device meant to destabilize Earth's core. The humans wore patched suits and carried jury-rigged explosives. They moved like ghosts in the low gravity, silent and focused. One by one, they planted charges. One by one, they fell to Krell sentries. Only Eli reached the anchor. He triggered the detonator with his last breath. The explosion sent a shockwave through the Krell fleet, knocking 3 capital ships out of alignment. Earth's defenses seized the opening. They sacrificed themselves. "For strangers," said the Quillen delegate, tears like liquid light trailing down her face. Ambassador Lyra stood. Her voice, usually calm, now carried the weight of revelation. "We were wrong. We judged them by their past, not their potential. While we sat in comfort debating ethics, they stood in fire and chose to protect each other. That is not primitiveness. That is strength of spirit." Counselor Vex nodded slowly. "The Krell assumed Earth would break, but it is bending without snapping, and in that bend it is becoming something new." The council watched as night fell over Earth. In ruined cities, people shared food, water, and stories. Children drew pictures of pilots and medics as heroes. Old enemies stood guard together. The planet was wounded but not defeated. And above it all, human ships, small, scarred, but flying, patrolled the edge of the atmosphere like wolves guarding their den. The drone feed flickered. A final image appeared. A child in Tokyo, no older than 6, holding a handmade sign that read, "We are still here." The words were simple. The message was clear. In the Galactic Council chamber, no one spoke for a long time. The hum of the crystal walls softened as if in respect. They had come to witness an ending. Instead, they were watching a beginning. And for the first time, they wondered if humanity might not need saving at all. Maybe, just maybe, humanity would end up saving them. Part 3. The Krell were angry. Their ships had taken damage. Their soldiers had fallen. Their perfect invasion was turning into a mess. High Warlord Zorvac paced the command deck of the Iron Maw, his claws clicking against the metal floor. He had promised his masters a quick victory. Now Earth refused to die, so he made a decision. He would end this the only way he knew how, with total destruction. Deep in the belly of his flagship, Planet Cracker warheads powered up. These were not ordinary bombs. They were designed to split worlds open like rotten fruit. Each one carried enough force to trigger massive earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Zorvac ordered them aimed at Earth's major fault lines, the San Andreas, the Ring of Fire, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. In one strike, he would shatter the planet's crust and turn its surface into a wasteland. No more cities, no more fighters, no more humans. But Earth had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone knew. Years ago, After the first secret contact with a dying alien scout ship, a group of scientists and engineers had started a hidden project. They called it Project Lazarus. Its goal was simple. If Earth ever faced total annihilation, they would have one last defense. They built a network of gravitic dampeners, massive machines buried deep in the ocean floor, hidden inside dormant volcanoes and under polar ice. These dampeners could absorb and redirect seismic energy. Most people on Earth didn't even know they existed. Not even most world leaders. Only a few trusted minds like Admiral Nora Kim held the keys. Nora Kim stood in a control room buried 2 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. The walls were smooth black alloy. Screens glowed with real-time data from every corner of the planet. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and calm hands. She had lost her husband in a border conflict 20 years ago. She had sworn then that she would never let Earth fall to outsiders again. When the Krell warheads powered up, her system detected the energy surge instantly. "Lazarus is ready," she said into her comm. Her voice was steady. "All stations hold position. We do this together." Above her, in orbit, Chris Dawson and the last of his squadron watched the Krell launch the warheads. 5 glowing spheres of death shot toward Earth like falling stars. Human ships tried to intercept, but the warheads were shielded too heavily. They would hit in 8 minutes. On the ground, Lena Ortiz was still in Chicago. She had heard rumors of Project Lazarus but never seen proof. Now a secure message flashed on her tablet. It was from Admiral Kim. "Activate grid echo, full sync." Lena didn't hesitate. She rerouted every bit of spare power in the city's network toward the oceanic relay stations. Across the globe, engineers like her did the same in Mumbai, Cape Town, Oslo, Sydney. Power grids dimmed. Lights flickered. But the dampeners began to hum. Under the Pacific, the first warhead struck. It hit the Mariana Trench with a force that should have cracked the planet in half. Instead, the energy vanished, sucked into the dampeners like water into a sponge. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the redirected energy surged back upward, not as destruction, but as a focused gravitic pulse. It shot into orbit and slammed into the nearest Krell dreadnought. The ship's shields buckled. Its hull twisted like paper. It exploded in a silent flash of fire. The Krell were stunned. Their second warhead hit near Japan. Same result. The energy was absorbed, redirected, and fired back. Another Krell ship died. Zorvak roared in fury. "What is this trick?" he demanded. But there was no trick. Only human foresight and quiet preparation. While the dampeners held the line, another battle raged in the digital dark. In a basement in Detroit, 17-year-old Marcus Bell hunched over 3 cracked laptops wired together with duct tape and hope. He led a group called Iron Finch, hackers, coders, and gamers who had turned their skills into weapons. They had been probing Krell systems since day one, looking for a weakness. They found it in the enemy's command language, a rigid, hierarchical code that assumed obedience, not deception. Marcus wrote a virus. It didn't attack firewalls. It pretended to be a Krell surrender signal from Earth. The message was simple. We yield. Cease fire. Prepare for boarding. The Krell system, designed to accept orders from above, accepted it as truth. For 17 minutes, the entire fleet believed Earth had surrendered. Ships powered down weapons to prepare for occupation. That was when human fighters struck. Rail slugs tore through unshielded engines. Missiles found open hatches. Dozens of Krell vessels went dark. But the real masterstroke came from the moon. Colonel Eli Grant's sacrifice had damaged the Krell gravity anchor but not destroyed it. A new team, led by engineer Diego Ruiz, launched a shuttle from a hidden lunar base. They carried a single device, a fusion core overloaded to critical mass. Their mission was suicide. They knew it, but they went anyway. As they approached the anchor, Krell sentries opened fire. 2 crew members died instantly. Diego took a plasma burn to the leg but kept crawling. He reached the anchor's core chamber, planted the device, and triggered the timer. He didn't run. He sat down, leaned against the wall, and whispered, "Tell my daughter I kept her sky safe." The explosion ripped through the anchor and sent a shockwave through the Krell fleet's gravity net. Ships lost formation. Weapons misfired. Shields flickered. On Earth, people felt the change. The sky seemed lighter. The fear less heavy. Radios crackled with new hope. "They're falling apart," someone said in a shelter in Berlin. "We're still here," replied another in Manila. Back in orbit, Chris Dawson saw his chance. He led the last of his squadron in a final run. They targeted the Iron Maw's command spire, the heart of the invasion. Rail slugs, missiles, and even old-fashioned kinetic rods rained down. The Krell flagship shuddered. Alarms blared. Zorvak stared at the view screen as his fleet crumbled around him. He had come to break Earth. Instead, Earth had broken him. He gave one last order: retreat. The surviving Krell ships turned and fled into the void, leaving behind wreckage, dead soldiers, and a planet that refused to kneel. In the quiet that followed, humans did not cheer. They helped each other. They dug through rubble. They shared water. They mourned the lost. And they looked up at the stars, not with fear but with pride. They had not won with better weapons or bigger ships. They had won with brains, with bravery, and with each other. And somewhere far away, unseen eyes watched in awe, realizing that Earth was not a weak world to be erased. It was a force to be reckoned with. Part 4. The Krell fleet was broken. Their ships limped away from Earth like wounded beasts trailing smoke and silence. But the danger was not over. The Galactic Council knew the Krell would not accept defeat quietly. They would return with more ships, more fury, and lies to cover their shame. And if they did, Earth would not survive a second wave. The Council had watched long enough. They had to act. For the first time in over 200 cycles, the Council called an emergency session. No debates, no delays. The chamber of living crystal pulsed with urgent light as delegates rushed to their rings. Ambassador Lyra stood at the center, her silver skin glowing faintly. She held a data crystal in her hand, the one recovered from the downed Krell ship near Geneva. It contained proof, not just of the invasion but of the Krell's lies. They had forged reports, faked bioscans, and bribed minor officials to label Earth as a threat, all to justify theft disguised as cleansing. Counselor Vex played the evidence for all to see. Holograms showed Krell officers laughing as they edited human population data, inflating numbers to make Earth seem unstable. Another clip showed a Krell admiral ordering the destruction of a peaceful research outpost on Mars, then blaming it on human extremists. The chamber fell silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. "This is not war," Lyra said, her voice clear and sharp. "This is piracy dressed in armor, and we allowed it." A murmur rose among the delegates. Some were ashamed. Others were angry. A few had accepted Krell gifts over the years, rare minerals, ancient artifacts, and now felt the weight of guilt. The Quillan delegate spoke up, her voice trembling. "We judged humanity by their noise, their wars, their mess. But when real evil came, they stood. We did not." Vex turned to the central console. "The Krell must be stopped. Not just from attacking Earth again, but from threatening any world with their lies." He paused. "And Earth. Earth must be protected, not as a ward, but as a witness." The vote was called. One by one, the rings lit up with approval. 53 species. 53 lights. Unanimous. The Council would intervene. Within hours, peacekeeper armadas from the Orlan hegemony and the Zira Concord folded space at the edge of the Sol system. Their ships were sleek and silver, humming with calm power. They did not fire a single shot. They simply appeared, blocking the Krell's escape routes, surrounding their crippled fleet, and broadcasting a single message in every known language. "Cease all hostile action. Surrender command codes. Await judgment." The Krell tried to bluff. High Warlord Zorvak sent a defiant reply. But when he saw the size of the peacekeeper force, 10 times larger than his own, he knew resistance was suicide. Slowly, grudgingly, the Krell powered down their weapons and opened their comms. Back on Earth, no one knew what was happening in orbit. People were still digging through rubble, tending to the wounded and trying to rebuild. In Chicago, Lena Ortiz helped restore clean water to a shelter housing 300 families. In Detroit, Marcus Bell slept for the first time in days, curled up on a couch with his laptop still humming. In a field hospital near Tokyo, Ray Boyd changed bandages with gentle hands, even though his own arm was wrapped in cloth. Then, a new signal broke through every radio, every screen, every phone. It was not human. The voice was calm, deep, and carried a strange music. It spoke in simple English, translated in real time by council linguists. "People of Earth, this is Ambassador Lyra of the Galactic Council. The Krell Dominion has been ordered to stand down. Their invasion was based on lies. You were not the threat. They were. We watched you fight. We saw your courage. and we offer our deepest apology." Silence fell across the planet. Then slowly people began to cry. Not from fear, but from relief. They had not been alone after all. The message continued. "We also offer you something more. Provisional membership in the Galactic Concord, not as subjects, not as students, but as equals. Your world has earned a seat at the table." In Geneva, a temporary Earth delegation formed overnight. Scientists, soldiers, teachers, and even a farmer from Kenya were chosen. Not for titles, but for wisdom. Dr. Helen Wu, the linguist who had helped decode the Krell logs, was named lead envoy. She stood before a makeshift camera in a damaged conference room and spoke to the stars. "We accept your offer, but we do not forget what happened. We will join your council, but we will speak for those who cannot, and we will never let fear silence us again." High above, the peacekeeper ships formed a protective ring around Earth. They scanned for hidden Krell mines, repaired damaged satellites, and even helped clear orbital debris. Their presence was not occupation. It was respect. The Krell commanders were taken into custody. Their warships were stripped of weapons and placed under council guard. Zorvak, once proud and roaring, sat in a quiet cell of light and air, staring at his claws as if they belonged to someone else. On Earth, life began to return. Markets reopened. Children went back to school in tents. Farmers planted new seeds in scorched fields. And every night people looked up not in fear but in wonder. The stars were no longer just distant lights. They were neighbors, allies, maybe even friends. Ambassador Lyra watched from her ship as Earth healed. She saw Chris Dawson visit a memorial for his fallen wingmates. She saw Lena Ortiz teach engineers from other countries how to build better grids. She saw Marcus Bell laugh with kids who called him a hero. She saw Ray Boyd carry a little girl on his shoulders during a peace parade in Lagos. "They did not need us to save them," she said to Counselor Vex over a private channel. "They saved themselves. And maybe they saved us too." Vex nodded slowly. "We had forgotten what courage looked like. They reminded us." And so, under the watchful eyes of ancient stars and new allies, Earth took its first real step into the galaxy, not as a victim, not as a child, but as a voice that had been tested in fire and found unbreakable. Part 5. The war was over, but the world was still learning how to breathe again. Cities stood with broken windows and patched walls. Yet people walked their streets with straighter backs. The fear that had gripped Earth for weeks had not vanished, but it had changed. It was no longer the fear of being crushed. It was the quiet worry of what came next. And for the first time in human history, next meant more than just another year on the same old planet. It meant stars, treaties, and a seat among beings older than mountains. In Colorado, Chris Dawson stood in his family's field at sunrise. The soil was dry, the air crisp. He held a small sapling in his hands, its roots wrapped in burlap, its leaves trembling in the breeze. He dug a hole with a rusty shovel, placed the tree inside, and patted the earth around it. This was for his sister, lost in the first Krell strike on Denver. He didn't say a word. He just stood there watching the sun climb, feeling the wind on his face like a promise. Later that day, he would report to the New Earth Space Defense Command, not as a soldier, but as an advisor. They needed pilots who understood both sky and silence. In Chicago, Lena Ortiz walked through a newly rebuilt power hub. Solar panels lined the roof. Fusion coils hummed softly in the basement. The walls were still marked with soot, but the lights burned steady. She had turned down offers to lead engineering teams on Mars and the Moon. "Earth needs me here," she told the recruiters. And it did, not just for wires and circuits, but for the way she made people believe things could work again. She taught teenagers how to read schematics, showed elders how to operate backup grids, and once spent an entire night fixing a water purifier in a refugee camp with nothing but a wrench and a smile. On the Moon, a memorial stood where Colonel Eli Grant had fallen. It was simple. A black stone etched with his name and the words, "He held the line." Visitors left small tokens, a child's drawing, a pilot's glove, a single white flower grown in a lunar greenhouse. Diego Ruiz, who had survived the anchor mission by sheer luck, now trained new recruits in zero-gravity tactics. He never spoke much about that day, but sometimes when the sun hit the crater just right, he would stand at the edge and whisper, "We kept the sky." Back on Earth, Ray Boyd received a medal in Geneva. It was called the Star of Sol, shaped like a sun with 8 rays made from melted-down Krell armor. He wore it once, then tucked it into his pocket. "My squad earned this," he told the crowd. "Not me." He went back to field medicine, this time teaching others how to save lives under fire. In Lagos, he helped build a mobile clinic that could run on solar power and treat 50 patients a day. Kids followed him like a hero, but he just laughed and handed them bandages to roll. "Everyone can help," he'd say. "You don't need wings or lasers. Just hands and heart." High above in orbit, human and alien ships moved together. Orlan peacekeepers shared sensor data with Earth's defense grid. Zira engineers helped upgrade old satellites with crystal-based comms. There were no flags on these ships, just a new symbol. A blue circle with a single white star representing Earth's voice in the conquered. It flew beside banners of light and sound from 53 worlds, all equal, all listening. The Galactic Council had changed too. They no longer spoke of tier levels or primitive species. In their records, Earth was listed simply as Sol Prime, voice of resilience. Ambassador Lyra visited often, walking through markets in Mumbai, farms in Iowa, and labs in Nairobi. She asked questions. She listened. Once, a little girl in Manila handed her a paper crane made from old star charts. Lyra kept it on her desk ever since. Dr. Helen Wu led Earth's delegation with quiet strength. She didn't shout. She didn't demand. She simply spoke truth about loss, about hope, about the cost of peace. At her first full council session, she proposed a new rule. No species could be judged by its past alone. Every world deserved a chance to show who it could become. The motion passed unanimously. Marcus Bell, the hacker from Detroit, became something unexpected. A bridge. He worked with alien coders to build a universal data network that respected privacy and shared knowledge freely. He joked that he was just fixing the galaxy's Wi-Fi, but his work helped prevent future lies like the Krells. He even taught a class online that students from 6 species attended. His favorite lesson? Always question the source. Night after night, people gathered outside, not in fear, but in wonder. They pointed to the sky and named the ships they saw, Human, Orlan, Zira, like old friends. Children drew pictures of pilots and medics alongside beings with wings and light skin. Schools added new subjects: galactic ethics, interstellar communication, peace engineering. The world was healing, not by forgetting but by remembering together. And far away in the velvet dark between stars, the silver drone still watched. It sent no more reports of invasion or chaos. Now its data streams carried songs from Earth, music made from rain, from voices, from the hum of rebuilt cities. The council played those songs in their chamber, not as curiosity but as reminder. Ambassador Lyra stood once more before the Earth delegation. This time there were no apologies, only respect. "You did not just defend your world," she said, her voice soft but clear. "You reminded us all what courage truly means. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand anyway." Chris Dawson looked up from his field. Lena Ortiz checked a power line. Ray Boyd bandaged a scraped knee. Marcus Bell typed a line of code. And billions of others lived their lives, not as survivors, but as builders. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a promise. And in the quiet hum of a healing world, that promise echoed across the stars.